the Bitcoin IPO moment.
Yeah.
Like early believers kind of selling their coins and institution buying.
Yeah.
Can we apply, maybe let's take Bitcoin, ETH and Solana, or whatever you want. Let's start with Bitcoin. I want to understand, with all these kind of biases that we just can't get right, how high can this thing go based on what we just talked about?
Yeah. So obviously not financial advice. Please don't ever listen to anything I say about where you should or shouldn't put your money. But here's how we explain it to people when they ask us, like our LPs and our funds, and they say, okay, how should we think about this? And what we say is, look, at 100,000 foot view, you have to understand what's happening at the backdrop. And the backdrop that we have right now is we have a fiscal situation in most Western countries that is creating a lot of spending, and it's unsustainable. We're spending more money than we're bringing in, to very, very large percentages now, like 7%, debt loads, and this is remarkable. There are only a couple of ways forward. If you assume that this is like one of the big drivers in the world, one is you could try to cut spending, entitlement spending. Not going to happen. Like, nobody wants to pick winners and losers. You can't get reelected as a politician if you cut, health benefits for old people or poor people or young. There's no winners here. Nobody's going to do that. There's no political will to do that. Option two is to raise taxes. Nobody's going to do that. Extremely unpopular, practically speaking, in most places, very hard to pull off. People are mobile. They'll pick up and leave with their wealth. We've seen this in the UK. We've seen this in the EU. In the US, taxes are unpopular. Again, not getting reelected if you raise a bunch of taxes. Not going to happen. Option three, which is the path that we've been on, is currency debasement. What you're going to do is inflate your way out of it in some form, ideally hidden, so most people don't realize it. And you call that money printing. And that's the path that we're on, because it's politically viable. Like, nobody has to make a hard call. Nobody has to say, like, I did that thing. It sort of secretly happens behind the scenes and you get reelected as a politician. And option four is we grow our way out of it. If you can actually fundamentally boost GDP through productivity gains, then we can actually afford all the things that we want to give people in society, because we can grow our way there. So 1 and 2 are not going to happen. And option 3, you really want to be in fixed supply assets, things that the government cannot create more of. So you want to be in California coastline. You want to be in gold. You want to be in copper. You want to be in Bitcoin. And once you start, you want to be in fine art. Like, there's no more Da Vinci's, right? You just go buy Da Vinci. So when you look at it through that lens, you realize actually that stores of value that are seizure resistant, that are resistant to government creation, are extremely valuable, because the backdrop of the world has changed. And most people are just starting to realize that the world has changed, that we're in this new regime. And so most of the world hasn't even figured out this is what's happening yet, right? So we're very early in this. As people figure it out, the question is, where will they put their assets? And our assertion is that when you look at the properties of a good store of value, whether you want it to be fungible, easy to transfer, easy to subdivide, highly liquid market, extremely protected against seizure, especially from a government, extremely protected from the government just being able to create more of it, yada yada. I think the digital stores of value, like a Bitcoin or an ETH, are far superior to many of these other options. Again, most of the world has not realized this yet, and so they will. And so then you say, okay, well, how will these things get valued? And I think, the easiest way to reason about it, 80 IQ way to reason about it, is relative to comps. And so say, take something like Bitcoin, it's digital gold. That's a meme. People get it. Wall Street now gets that. The pension funds and the sovereign wealth are starting to get that. The central banks have not gotten it yet. And if you just do a 1-to-1, you say, look, if Bitcoin can be as big as gold, because everybody in the world that has gold wants some Bitcoin, and there's a rotation happening, you do the math. We used to do this math in like 2017, 2018, and you just do this sort of market cap of gold divided by 21 million Bitcoin, and back then you would have gotten to like 400K. These days you get to like 1.2 million, because the market cap of gold has gone up so much, in part because of the currency debasement. And so a really, really simple back of the envelope is like, Bitcoin's worth at least $1 million if it gets to the same market cap as gold. And back to this idea of exponential growth and underestimating markets and so on, you in these markets, generally when you put things on a phone, you get TAM expansion. The total addressable market goes up. So I go back to something like Uber. The criticism against Uber, like the Series A, was, well, the entire taxi industry is worth $10 billion. How could you possibly be worth more than $10 billion? And here we are when Uber is worth $100 billion, right? And not only do we have Uber, we have DoorDash, and we have Instacart, and we have Didi, and we have Grab, and right, that whole market is hundreds of billions of dollars. It ended up being 50x bigger. And so I think there's a very reasonable assertion that when you put digital gold on a phone, and now all of a sudden 3 billion people can have it instead of 300 million people that have gold, you actually get massive TAM expansion. And so, our house view is that it's very likely that gold is too small a comp, that actually Bitcoin is much, much bigger because it's so much easier for people. Like there are a lot of people in the world that would like to have gold. They can't get it. And now they can. And so they will. And so actually I think, I don't think like a, $5 to $10 million in the fullness of time is at all crazy, just because you get TAM expansion. And that's the history of every piece of software for the last 30 years would tell you that once you put it on a phone, once you put it in front of 1 billion people, once you put it in front of 5 billion people, the market size actually goes up by 5 to 10x. But you sound like a crazy person when you say that, right? Like in 2017, we used to say Bitcoin's going to 1 million, and we sounded like crazy people. And now you say Bitcoin's going to like 5 or 10 million, you sound like a crazy person. But it's not that crazy once you reason through it, because the denominator is also it's not 21. It's like Satoshi's coins are locked. Like a bunch of people have lost their Bitcoin. Dollars getting denominated. You start reasoning through this, and you're like, man, you can get to some pretty large numbers without sounding. If you reason through it, it's not that crazy.
If you use the gold comparison, you make the assumption that gold just has to go up and Bitcoin to stay the kind of same percentage for Bitcoin to go up. That's one, right? Then if Bitcoin gets market shares from gold, it's going up also. Yeah. And then if it becomes much bigger because it's on a phone, well, then you don't sound crazy anymore.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and it's what is not that crazy is, I mean, you just pull out your phone right now and look at all the apps on your phone. How many of those applications have more than 1 billion users? A lot of them, actually. 1 billion users on a mobile device is not what it used to be. I probably have 20 apps on my phone that have 1 billion users, right? And so, like, I think we're just very early in this. There's a big question here about how long it takes. I'm not saying it's going to happen in 2 years, but again, when you're thinking about compounding and investing, it's often like the back 10 years. Like we're 15 years into Bitcoin, we're 10 years into ETH. A lot of times the real compounding is like not the first 10 years or the first 15 years. It's like you have something durable that continues to compound, right? It's Amazon, it's Google, it's NVIDIA. It's like actually those back 10 or 15 years is where like the real compounding is. Let's
maybe finish today with applying this concept to an ETH or a SOL. I mean, maybe a SOL is too early. I don't know. How do you think about these things?
Yeah, ETH we tend to think of also as some sort of store of value. I think it's going to be interesting to see how that gets carved up. Even if you say, look, if you're a BTC maxi, you might say, look, ETH is not as good as gold, origin story, yada, yada. Okay. Is ETH better than silver? I think it is. Would I rather have like 100 kilograms of silver and try to figure out what the hell to do with it? Or would I rather just have some ETH on my phone that I can turn into stables and I can get some yield, and way rather have ETH. And so silver is worth something like, 2.5 trillion. That's like a 5x right there from where ETH is today. And I think a lot of people will actually say, you know what? I don't want to have 100% BTC. There's a lot of reasons to not be 100% BTC, just from technical risk and fork risks. And maybe I should take some percentage of this and be allocating it to ETH. I think a lot of rational investors will take that sort of an approach. They're not going to be BTC maxis. And so I think there's a natural sort of reallocation that will happen. So not only will Bitcoin eat up gold market share, but I think ETH starts to eat up gold market share. Because people say, well, should I just have one digital store value? Shouldn't I just hedge a little bit? And so they'll reallocate between the two. So I think we're still very early in sort of that. I mean, to zero index it, right? ETH just turned 10 in July 2025, right? It started in 2015. Bitcoin turned 10 in January 2019. And all of the institutional understanding about what Bitcoin is, like if you go back to 2018, 2019, Larry Fink doesn't understand it. Wall Street doesn't understand it. It's a real, outside thing. 2019 to 2023 is when Wall Street got their head around it. That's when everybody who was an institutional investor said, oh, I get it now. That's exactly where ETH is now, in our opinion, right? It's just like the Wall Street folks are just starting to get their heads around it. And so is it so crazy that ETH does what Bitcoin did between 2019 and 2024? Like that 5-year window is when all the institutional investors got their heads around it. Doesn't seem crazy to us that over the next 5 years, same thing happens for ETH. We also very bullish on Sol.
As a store of value, completely different thesis. How do you categorize this?
Today, I mean, it could evolve. There's no reason it couldn't evolve. And I think ETH evolved, for example. So maybe Sol could get there one day. Today, we tend to think of it more like a computational layer, which still has a huge amount of upside. I think what would it be worth to have in AWS? Like if you look at Amazon's market cap, most of it is probably AWS. Like they have a huge brand, but like the grocery business or, the retail business doesn't make that much money. It's a huge moat, but it's really AWS that makes all the money. And so what is it worth to have an AWS where, global retail is participating in financial transactions, right? Or we tend to think Solana as the architecture is actually really good for things like social applications. Like if you look at like the intersection of sort of entertainment and financial applications, the Solana ecosystem is really excelling there. Like there are a lot of really interesting experiments that happen there, in part because the way the architecture works, and so it's easy for devs to get in there and write code and ship stuff. And so, what is a thing that's like AWS for financial transactions for everybody who's a retail person in the world worth? It's if AWS is worth $1 trillion, is it so crazy that Sol could be in that same tier? That doesn't seem crazy to us. And so that's kind of how we think about it today. It could evolve. But I think what Solana is like uniquely good at relative to Bitcoin or relative to ETH is actually a lot of that kind of stuff. We just like on the ground, when we look at the devs and what they're doing, there's like that's like where we see a lot of creativity and interest for these sort of like end consumer experiences. I think that the developers in that ecosystem really excel.